Can you walk me through a couple of elements that are right and then tell me what are people doing wrong or not doing that you can show on yours that you are doing that makes a difference?
So the first thing that I would do is say, you see that I've got a banner on my photo or my profile.
Yep. Got it. Yep. Welcome to the Vision to Reality podcast. I'm your host, Curtis L. Jenkins, and in each episode, I speak with industry experts, thought leaders, and innovators to break down the strategies, techniques, and methods that turn their ideas into reality. Whether your vision is to scale your business, build and lead a winning team, prepare for your next big career move, this podcast is for you. Let's get started and bring your vision to reality. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vision to Reality podcast, where our guests are visionaries who've made their visions turn into reality. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Curtis Jenkins, and I'm so glad that you're here because today we have an incredible episode lined up. We're talking about how to stand out in today's competitive job market by building a powerful personal brand, mastering LinkedIn, and in uncovering hidden opportunities, something that can make a huge impact on your career. And to help us dive deep, I have a fantastic guest joining me today, and Melanie Mitchell-Wexler, who's a career coach, a LinkedIn strategist, and a former recruiter with 20 plus years of experience and guiding professionals through purposeful career transitions. Melanie specializes in helping mid to executive level clients craft compelling personal brands, optimize their LinkedIn presence, and navigate the hidden job market with clarity and confidence. Known for her practical, no fluff advice and empowering coaching style, Melanie equips job seekers with the tools they need to stand out and land the roles that align with their values and their vision. Melanie, thanks for joining us today.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So, all right, let's just get right into it. And who should listen to this podcast? Who's going to benefit the most from listening to our conversation?
You know what? I'm going to honestly put a wide blanket out, and I'm going to tell people that whether you are an active job seeker right now, then yes, you should be listening. But even if you're not actively job seeking, there's going to be things here that you should be thinking about based on today's world. And whether you think you're going to be, maybe you're passively looking here or there. But one of the things that we know, what we're seeing across the board in today's market is a lot of uncertainty. We're hearing a lot about layoffs, and I don't want to be doom and gloom. I don't want to, always focus on that. But I think one of the things I find is that people are just generally not prepared. They're not thinking it can happen to me. They're not thinking about the future, but also, where are you planning on going with your career? Are you happy? Where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? Are you achieving those goals right now? So all of this is going to be practical advice for anyone that is looking to make that change. It also can be applied to entrepreneurs. It can be applied to business owners that are looking to make transitions as well. So having a strong personal brand is something that transcends across the board for everyone.
Nice. Personal brand, we've been talking about that a lot lately in the world. And so why is that important? Like really, why is that
Sometimes
important?
I feel like maybe it's become a little bit of a catchphrase there where we hear about the personal brand. And I know some people
Yeah.
honestly repel when they hear about it because they're like, well, I'm not Nike, I'm not Amazon, I'm not Apple, I'm not, like, I don't want to have to sell myself. But that is the reality of the world that we're in today. We know that today's landscape is highly competitive. What I always say when I'm coaching, because I do coach consultants, I coach small business owners to the active job seeker, that we have to find, how do we stand out? So there's a ton of career coaches out there, right? There's a ton that, quote unquote, my competition. But I always tell people, like, I know very clearly who I serve and how I serve them. And so that's why somebody would hire me. So the same question goes for everybody else. Why should somebody hire you? Why should somebody want to work with you? Why should they choose you over that next person? And that's really where the personal brand comes. It's what you offer that somebody else doesn't. It's what makes you unique. And that's something we should be embracing when we're telling our story.
Okay. So talking about telling a story, tell me your story And why do you do this? Why is this work so important to you?
Yeah, so I have a very different path than what I think is the maybe quote unquote the average career coach. I never wanted to be a coach. The truth of the matter. I built a very successful recruiting career, was in that for 20 years, left a company back in 2017, went on my own career journey. To all honesty, never talked about being an entrepreneur, never talked about owning my own business, and definitely never talked about coaching. During that transition, I was still focused on recruiting. I was going to go into corporate recruiting. Had some speed bumps, which was the first time in my entire career that the transition to finding employment for me was personally a difficult one. I always say I'm a great doctor, I'm a horrible patient. And so, looking back, I'm like, yeah, that's the advice I give to people today, right? Of like all the things I didn't do. And I went through a period of time that was really honestly, and I just actually did a newsletter on LinkedIn about this, where I shared my story of having gotten laid off the Thursday before Thanksgiving. I had ups and downs in 2017. I went from having very much a career monogamist. I was like 3, 5, 8 years. And then in 2017, I had 4 jobs, which I
Mm,
thought I had ruined my career. I thought I had made all the wrong choices. Truthfully, at that point, bare bare bottom dollar. I was a single mom, didn't have any income coming in. I actually started doing some writing of resumes on the side. It wasn't out of the like greatness of my heart. It wasn't because I thought, wow, it was something I was like, okay, I know I can do this. I need cash. And
yeah.
so that's the real story of it. But what happened was, and this is where I do think something amazing did happen out of this, like the lowest point of my career. I still landed another job the following February in 2018, but I had started building this little business on the side, not understanding, not really knowing how to do that or what you're supposed to do or how you should do it. And it just
Hmm.
started to grow. And then I found that, like, wow, you do have talent, and recognizing some of the talents that were transferable from my recruiting career and honoring them and being able to really help people. And
Hmm.
it gave me the excitement that recruiting once did. Recruiting's no longer, I knew I was kind of transitioning out of recruiting because I no longer got super excited about what I was doing. But knowing when my clients today message me and say, wow, I just landed that interview, or gosh, that I didn't realize I was doing that. It's usually the small things. Of course, landing the job is the big thing, but it's just giving people that confidence in themselves and having them recognize their own value. Is truly, honestly, a rewarding piece of that, and it allowed me to really utilize all of my talents. So for the person that didn't have that question answer to what am I going to do in 5 years, because I questioned that for a long time. I was like,
Yeah.
my staff's getting younger. I'm getting older. Am I going to be a recruiter for the rest of my life? I didn't see that, but I never had an answer to it. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, this was the missing piece of that puzzle.
Gotcha. And I do want to I want to talk about being a recruiter. But before I do that, you were just talking about the passion that you have for what you do. Give me that success story, the one that sort of brings up the emotion in you. Like you become a job coach now, and you've helped that person that may have been similar to yourself, and you were successful. Who was that person, and what did you learn about yourself after helping them?
Oh, there's actually a couple, but there's one individual I had an opportunity to work with. She came to me truly literally was in a toxic work environment. I mean, her direct supervisor, the CEO, were telling her things like, oh, well, we know you're the one that holds the insurance in your family. You're never going to find a job that's going to pay you. You're never going to leave because you're never going to find a job that's going to pay you the same that we're paying you. Treating her, just not valuing her experience. She was very skeptical. She's like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Should I be looking for a job? Maybe I've priced myself out of the market. Maybe I can't get that job that's going to pay me at that level. But more importantly, just the treating of respect and recognizing that like you bring a lot to the table, and walking her through that journey was truly, it was truly an honor because she One, I mean, it's an honor for all of my clients because they trust me. They put their trust in me that I'm going to walk by their side in that. But ultimately, she did land that job, and she did land a job that ended up paying her more. It ended up giving her that next level opportunity where she feels valued. She's recognized for her experience. She'd been with this company, I think something for like 20 years or something like that, and felt trapped. And that's usually typically the person, maybe not to that degree, but feeling like, I don't think there's something else out there. And what I always tell people, well, have you taken it upon yourself to actually research, and have you gone out there and have you really tried to find that? Because I was the same person too. I should have left my company a lot sooner than I did, but I
Hmm.
fell into those traps of like, well, I'm never going to find the same freedom that I have because I had earned my certain privileges and whatnot
Right.
for my years of experience, and I had a trust with my manager, or so I'm never going to find that flexibility. I knew I probably could get paid higher, but that flexibility as a single mom was really important to me at that point. And so
Yep.
I was really scared to like, or I convinced myself, I don't even want to say I was scared to leave. I just convinced myself it wasn't out there. It wasn't going to happen. And the truth is, I don't know if that was true or not. I bought into
Right.
that story that I told myself, which wasn't based on anything. It wasn't based on facts. And I think that's the thing that we have to do is anytime that you're looking to make a change or you're looking to make a pivot, we have to investigate what's happening in this world and where can I go, and not underestimating that. So I think that's something that's really important for people to do.
Okay. And so what you've unlocked for me just now is I'm imagining someone listening to this. They tell themselves stories. You've had clients tell themselves stories all the time. What would you say are maybe the top three stories? Maybe there's more than that, maybe there's less, but what are the most common stories people tell themselves when you're coaching them and that you have to unravel for them to get on the right path to being confident in their job search?
Can't make the change because I'm not going to make the same salary.
Okay.
Making a pivot is too hard. So if we're looking to change from industry to industry, those would definitely be the top two. And then I think the third is just more of a not owning, not recognize. I don't think it's a story per se, but not recognizing our own value.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I get. That one actually is probably number one, truthfully, is that when I help somebody, I rewrite somebody's resume and what I call a resume reboot, basically,
Yeah.
and I give it to them and they're like, who is this person? And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
this is the person that you just told me on that, 45-minute phone call that we had. And they're like, they don't recognize that person that's on this piece of paper. And,
Yeah.
I'm like, no, these are all the things that you've said, or I have exercises I have them write down and they go through and they write them out. And so, to really explore what you've achieved, because often we dismiss our achievements as nothing big.
Yes.
We did that, but yeah, whatever, so do a lot of other people. And
Yeah.
we often, and the other thing too, as we're talking here, is
Hmm.
giving credit like, oh, I don't want to take full credit for that because I had a team. And I'm always like,
Right.
okay,
Right.
we all understand that we're in the context of team environments here. I think we have to understand that the resume we're presenting is not about our team. It's not about a team presentation. It's about a
Yep.
me presentation.
That's right. That's
And
right.
you can acknowledge your team and you can say, hey, as a leader, this is how I did this, or this is how I manage my team.
That's
You
right.
can give those hints, but you also deserve to have credit for that. And I think that's the key, is that we don't tend to take credit. And again, being dismissive of those accomplishments.
So I interview all the time, and you just kind of hit, I wouldn't call it a pet peeve for me, but I try to get people to spend some time on the I and not the we. Tell me that story that gives me your value. And then the other thing that hits me, that what you talked about was the value, and that is not being able to articulate value. And if there's one thing I would say to job seekers that don't have a coach like you, well, first get a coach, because the advice is pretty much the same. It's like, hey, you got a mountain of value that you're sitting on. You just don't know how to articulate it. And I think that makes the difference between someone who gets the job and someone who doesn't, especially getting to the interview. And I know it can get really, really discouraging for job seekers when they just get turned down, interview after interview after interview, and they just get upset. And so I would say, how can you, or share with me, how do you get them to be more confident? How do you transition them from that we and us to the I, and then to start to use the buzzwords around delivering value? How do you do that?
So there's a couple of things, and I want to say too that that transition from the we, excuse me, from the we to the I, we've
Yeah.
been conditioned to be told, and there is obviously value in humility, and
Yes. Yep.
and we all recognize that. But I will also say, particularly women in particular, we're told to be, humble and kind of step back a little bit sometimes, or we're afraid to be that. So I think some of this is we've been conditioned to
Hmm.
not being, viewing that as not being humble. And in fact, not to get off the sidetrack, but it was something I recognized that I was doing to my own daughter when she was very little,
Hmm.
where my daughter was born with natural confidence, I say. Like she was just born who she was. And
Yeah.
somebody would say, like, oh, you're such a great dancer, or oh, you're so pretty. And her response at the age of 5 was, yes, I know.
Yeah.
So, yes, I know. And we'd be like, no, Zoe, you need to say thank you. And of course she needs to say thank you and she needs to recognize that. But I always say I was given a child with no humility whatsoever. I mean, she will
Yeah.
hear this and she knows I tell it to her all the time. But I recognized I was doing those things that I had been conditioned as a female, particularly to,
Yeah.
like, don't be so boastful about, like, don't be so proud of those achievements. And so
Right.
I started this with her, honestly, recognizing, like, no, you know what? You tell her she's the smartest girl in the world and she's going to recognize it. And that has suited her very well. And I've seen how that type of, like, mental training
Yeah.
changes our attitude. So I
Yeah.
add that because some of this is programmed into us. But there's two little tricks that I do. One is the recruiter trick and I don't want to call it a trick, but as a former recruiter, I've worked with people. I'm in Maryland, but I've worked with people across the United States. I've done a lot of remote type of recruiting, so I've had candidates all over the world. One of the things that we used to do in one of my jobs is literally just like, okay, we're going to do what we called an intake, and we had questions. The goal was just to get the candidate talking. Okay. The
Yeah.
goal was like, yes, there's certain pieces I need to know, but tell me about your experience. So oftentimes my clients, sometimes the first call, they're like, okay, so what do I expect? I'm like, literally, we're going to have a conversation and you're going to
Yeah.
tell me about your career. And I just want you to talk to me. There's no pressure. I'm just going to listen and I'm going to use transcription. I'm going to take some notes and then I'm going to start picking out little pieces that you're
Yeah.
highlighting because you naturally start to talk about your career and go, wait a minute, what about that? Or what about this? Then I take that information and I curate what I call highlights and achievement accomplished or highlights and accomplishment questions. I
Yep.
also use these. I tell people these are great pre-interview questions to help you prepare because these are the types of questions you're going to be asked. And I have them write their answers down because now I'm
Yeah.
starting to capture their voice and how they speak or how they see it. And so going back to the original example, when somebody says, who is this person? I'm like, it's you. You gave me all that information. I didn't create it. You're the one that gave that to me.
Yes.
I just put it in a form that showcases it in a way that you weren't doing it. You had it all the time because, again, most resumes lack that power. They lack
Yeah.
those stories. They lack those points. They're very dry or very basic at best. And so that's how I just really feel like if we can get you talking about your career and look at your career holistically, not just what you did in the last job you had, but from a big picture perspective, you start to see the things that you've done in a greater from a greater viewpoint.
Speaking of resumes, Melanie, and the inability to articulate your value, the way that you were just talking, people now are using AI to do their resumes. Are they making the mistake of not working with somebody like you by just taking AI, changing the words around, but still not leveraging the value? And then tell me if that's a mistake, then tell me what they should be doing, and then sort of launch into how is AI affecting, your overall coaching experience and the job search landscape.
Yeah, so first off, we have to understand AI has been around for quite some time. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not necessarily a new tool per se, but what we also realize is that tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, these are new tools for us that we have more accessibility to. And when they started rolling these things out, there was a lot of rumbling like, oh, it's going to replace all the career coach. As a career coach, you don't have a job. Like, it's going to write your resume for you. Started diving more into it. I actually do use these tools. I'm very transparent with that, but there's a big thing about how I use these tools. One of the
Okay.
things that I've learned in terms of my own education, because I do feel like, okay, how can we work smarter? How can you use these tools? How can I teach you and train you potentially? So, yes, you can write your resume with ChatGPT, 100%. Understand this. The information you put in is going to equal the information that it comes out with, or it's going to elaborate too much and it's not going to be truthful. And that's where the coach comes in terms of like, let's pull it back. But the key with these tools is you have to be very specific with prompts. It's not just a copy and paste. And I think most people don't quite realize it. They're still effective tools. I
Mhm.
mentioned that I do a lot of transcription of my notes and doing audio recording, and then I will transcribe my notes using these tools because it's much faster. And so I'm
Yeah,
able to
absolutely.
get to the point for my clients in a much quicker way. But that also being said, you have to have a you need to go back through this with a fine-tooth comb. You need to look at the details because I've used these tools and I've played around with them. And then all of a sudden we're creating brand new information. And I'm like, where did you get this from? Like, why all of a sudden, because it's writing based on what it has been told. So if it's been
That's
told
right.
like, oh, you need to have a quantifiable metric with a bullet point in a resume and you don't have it, it might insert it for you. And now we're not speaking the truth.
You're right.
And we've got to, so it's not just a one and done type of thing. And I think that was a big misconception when these tools became more accessible. So I don't necessarily oppose people using them, but I think that you should still tell your story more authentically first and then use them more to help you refine. I've used them for editing purposes. If like I have too big of a paragraph or I need help
Right.
editing out some words and like, okay, here's my sentence. Where could I edit this that still keeps the value of it because I'm not happy with how I edit it or I'm struggling with it? So those are great ways to use them, but they're not writing the resume. It's not taking the voice away from the person. The other thing too is these tools are really honestly, they have to be trained to your voice. They have to be, it's not, again, if you just start using it tomorrow,
Yeah.
it's using a lot of people's information and voice, not just yours. And
Right.
even then it gets it wrong some of the time. It's getting better.
Yep. Yep. It's improving every day, right? So, let me pivot right here, and I'm going to read you some statistics and get your points on this. As of March 2025, there are approximately 7.7 million job openings in the U.S., while about 7.2 million individuals are unemployed. This near parity suggests a tight labor market. However, this balance masks underlying complexities. Long term unemployment, approximately 1.7 million people, have been unemployed for 27 weeks or more, indicating challenges in re-entering the workforce. And the participation rate remains at 62.6%, slightly below pre pandemic levels, suggesting that some individuals may have exited the workforce. So, considering these figures, what strategies do you recommend for people facing prolonged unemployment or just entering the job market today?
Yeah, so we're in what I call the weirdest job market I've ever seen, knowing that
Yeah.
I have started my recruiting career in the very best economy ever, which I don't think we'll ever see again. There's also reasons why it was not good reasons why it was the best economy. Not a lot of regulation in some areas, so that caused that. But the flip side of that is I've also gone through two different recessions. And this is the strangest market I've ever seen. So as a recruiter in an agency setting, one of the things that I learned very quickly is have to understand the numbers. I'm not an economist. I am far from it. I actually don't like numbers or math or anything of that nature. But I have but I was really kind of trained from what I call an early stage of my career, like what do these numbers really mean? And so I'm glad that you brought up like the long-term unemployed. And sometimes we have to really dive deeper into these numbers of like, okay, of those 7.7 million jobs that are open, where is the majority of those jobs at? And what sector of the industries are those majority of those jobs at? That's probably spread across a lot of different industries. But to the people that are that are stuck in that unemployment, which I know I've worked with individuals, I'm working with a few now. I talk to these individuals on a daily basis. I think you have to be open to pivoting to something else to cover some short-term gaps, which is where some of those individuals that fall out of the market because they have taken other jobs. And I want to say this, that doesn't mean that your goal to land that permanent full-time job of the ideal position isn't possible. It just means we're taking a little bit, we're just taking a little bit of a different journey in that road to get there. So I do think that we have to be a little bit more open and a little bit more flexible to that. The other aspect that if you're just now going into the job market or you've been there, I think you have to look at the ways the job market doesn't act like the job market of 10 years ago, okay? Or the
Right.
last time that you were in. And even for me, I struggled back in 2017. It was my first time in 8 years on that side of the fence, and I struggled. So we
Yeah.
started seeing the job market shift in the way it reacts back then. And then we had the pandemic, which caused a whole other type of shift. It reshifted after the pandemic was technically over. We're re-entering the workforce, so to speak. And then we've had not great economic outcomes, but we haven't had bad economic outcomes. We've had a lot of uncertainty. And so we're in a whole different market, and it's consistently shifted year after year. This is where, for me, LinkedIn comes into play. I do not see job seekers putting themselves, they're doing the same tried and true efforts of apply, apply, apply. That is not going to cut it in today's market. It's just simply not. I have clients that tell me I don't have a network. And I'm like, well, then let's make one. Let's create one because you've got to put yourself out there. You have to be aggressive. You cannot wait for people to come to you. You've got to go to them. And you can't be afraid to do that either. Networking is huge. There's actually two aspects of networking, which is your circle. And I think there's sometimes we put our own shame on like, oh, I'm unemployed or I'm
Yeah.
asking for help. That's hard for us to do. And we have to like put that at the door and go, no, I need to share with what my struggles are and how can you help me? And that's again showing up, as that doesn't have to necessarily be visible on LinkedIn or anything of that nature, but to what I call your trusted circle. You need to share that struggle with them because nobody can help you unless they know how to help you. And if
Yeah.
you don't share it, then we can't help. But the same thing goes to the outer, what I call your outer circle. These are the people you don't know but want to build relationships with. Job seekers need to be on LinkedIn. I hear it all the time. LinkedIn doesn't work. LinkedIn doesn't work. And I'm like, it only works again based on what we have on our profile or what we're putting into it. It's a great tool when you use it in a way that actually is beneficial. But again, most people aren't doing that. So I think that's where I come in as a coach and do a lot of free webinars and other things of that nature. But I do think from a networking standpoint in today's job market, have to have you have to have a networking strategy to your job search strategy. And applying alone isn't going to get the job done.
Got it. So here's what I'm going to do right now. You're a LinkedIn strategist, and I am going to uh, go to your LinkedIn. See. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Hey, I just wanted to take a quick break to say Thank you for tuning in to the Vision to Reality podcast. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready to level up your business or career, I've got some great resources for you. To turn your business vision into reality, my book, Vision to Reality, Start Working, Start Living, is available now and filled with strategies to help you bring your goals to life. Plus, the companion Vision to Reality digital workbook is the perfect tool to guide you step by step through the process. You can grab both at curtisljenkins.com. And if you're preparing for your next job search, check out my book, The Only Job Search Book You Will Ever Need. This book uses proven marketing strategies that have been used for over 60 years to help you rise above competition to land your dream job. You can grab your copy at curtisljenkins.com. And I have great news. This book will be updated with a new version that includes recent impacts on the job search process, such as remote work, AI, government policy changes, and much more. Thanks again for listening. Now let's get back to the conversation. All right. So with you being a LinkedIn strategist, prior to this call, of course, I looked at it and I was like, I'm assuming this is what right looks like, right? Can you walk me through a couple of elements that are right and then tell me what are people doing wrong or not doing that you can show on yours that you are doing that makes a difference?
So the first thing that I would do is say, you see that I've got a banner on my photo or my profile.
Yep. Got it. Yep.
And
Yep.
so it's like your billboard, okay? It's a quick statement, a little bit of a tagline. So it's your advertisement. We're on the road trip. We're driving to, wherever. I'm old school. That's what my parents did.
Yeah. Yeah. You're looking
You
up at the
know,
billboard, right?
looking at the billboards. And so what does your billboard say? So this starts the branding piece of that.
Gotcha.
And most people don't have a a banner photo, to be very honest with you. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to hurt you, but wow, when I'm on a profile with a banner as opposed to a one without, all of a sudden there's a drastic difference. I'm like, oh, visually I'm intrigued to stay. We are visual consumers in today's world.
Gotcha.
If I get that
Gotcha.
gray box, what I call the gray box coffin thing,
Yeah.
it's not exciting. So I already know what, in this case, what I do. The other piece that I would say is, just really quickly on a few points is, okay, the photo, we need to have a photo. We need to show our photo. We need to have a clear photo. It needs to show roughly, I could tell that if I met you in person, that's who you are and what, I could recognize you.
Gotcha.
Big piece to understand about LinkedIn. Yes, it is social media, but at its heart and soul, it's one big search engine. Okay. So keywords, we talk a lot about keywords and job searching, but keywords live and die on LinkedIn. And you
Gotcha.
want to have keywords with meaning from this standpoint. So having a headline that actually says what you do and how you help people is far more influential, and having additional keywords than just your title at a certain company, or we might see actively looking. That is not going to help you come up. We want you to come up in searches. So how do you, think
So
this
these
is where
keywords here.
yeah, those keywords there. So you could type in career coach, you could type in LinkedIn. I always tell people I'm going to teach you how to think like a recruiter. If I'm the person hiring for this job you're about to apply for, what are going to be the keywords that I'm going to look for? So
Mm,
typically across the board, if you take 10 jobs that you apply for, I would say 90% of those keywords should be the same. Now there's going to be nuances and things like that, but you should overall should be having consistent keywords that you're applying for across the board. And then
gotcha.
if
So
you
your resume should have the keywords, the LinkedIn should have the keywords, everything associated with you should have these same keywords across all platforms, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And I always say keywords with meaning. So some people
Yeah,
love to
gotcha.
do what we call keyword stuffing, which, yes, I get on LinkedIn. You can easily do that, but let's have it with meaning. Let's have it with purpose. And then if you
Got it.
scroll down a little bit, you'll see there my about section. This is an underutilized piece. So your about section is. This is when I get tested. Again, I'm not the numbers person. I want to say it's 2,200 characters off the top of my head. But it's your chance to tell your story. 9 times out of 10, I see job seekers copy and paste their summary from their resume. Remember, on a resume, we're limited. We're
Yeah.
limited from a real estate perspective. Here, we're not
Right.
limited. I can use the personal pronouns. I can tell my story. I can have a call to action. Again, I've got the key types of things that I do. I show some proof. I always tell people, let's take each of your sections. And if I only read that section, would it tell me who you are? If I looked at nothing else, would I understand who you are and what you do? Now, the key is then we put all of them together as a puzzle and it creates a brand. Creates a cohesive messaging piece from top to the bottom. So
Gotcha.
that's what so your about section, again, every word, no matter where it's at in your profile, allows you to come up in a search. I joke that, like, hey, if we wanted to find quilt makers on LinkedIn, by the way, yes, you can. You can type in up at the search bar quilt maker. It's gonna find you quilt makers.
Yeah.
So it's
If
also
you put
proof
it in here,
too.
right? If you put it here
Yeah,
or up
right at the
here.
very top there.
Yep.
And then the other thing too is, like, which is also proof that everybody's on LinkedIn. So there's an audience for everybody. Um, and then the other piece is your work experience. So oftentimes people do not have their work experience section filled out. I've got a lot of, like, content, things of that nature that I do, but they leave these sections blank, or and you don't have to replicate your resume here. I just need enough to say, let's pick up the phone and have a conversation. Let's talk.
Gotcha.
And so oftentimes these are left blank. And then lastly, at the very bottom, recommendations. This is your social proof. This is what people are going. Now we've said
Wow.
all these great
32.
things. I try. I'm not always great about asking people. I'm a work in progress. But one of the things is, we want to have that social proof. So whether you're first starting out, whether you're building that relationship, you want those people to be able to say, hey, here's how my experience is working with you, especially senior leaders. Um, if I'm going to hire you to lead a team, I want to see people that you've led recommending you. I mean, that speaks volumes to your leadership style, to your personality, to all of these things. So they're you know, pieces of social proof that add value to what you do.
Gotcha. So let me try to quickly summarize, and I appreciate you going through this on the spot. But you talked about the banner,
Yep.
the photo, and the photo should be recognizable. I should be able to see you at an event and go, okay, I've seen you. Your keywords just below your photo, your about section. Take advantage of that about section. People don't take advantage of that about section. And then what is it called?
The work experience.
The work experience, and not necessarily recrafting your resume there, because what I find in that space when I see people talk about the past versus what's possible, right? So you can talk about where you worked, but put it in a way around what's possible and the value that you can bring. Is that a correct way to look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be a replica of your resume. Now, yes, as a recruiter, I might go, yes, if you said you worked here and I don't see it on your LinkedIn profile, I might question that, or like what's happened, or I see different dates and things like that. So I might, so you want the facts to be the facts, but
Gotcha.
it's not your resume. So you're not constrained by by your resume. Understand that, yes, obviously we want to show up authentically and truthful, but it's not your resume in that sense. And so a lot of times I see just people take all their information, they just dump it in there, and then they walk away from it, and then they tell me, oh, LinkedIn sucks, it doesn't work. And I'm like,
Gotcha.
well, let's talk about that.
Gotcha. Well, I'll tell you what, this last piece about recommendations, right? I've never seen that many recommendations, but we live in a world where social proof is everything, right? So that part is powerful. So, thank you for kind of sharing that LinkedIn experience, so people can understand. And so let me ask you just a couple more questions
Yeah.
and I want to hit on you being a recruiter, right? I'm seeing this all the time on LinkedIn. On the open to work banner is like a scarlet letter. That's one. We'll touch that. And then two, recruiters are always ghosting me. What's happening where job seekers are saying, they're being ghosted by recruiters when I know recruiters are bombarded with a lot of information. Hit the scarlet letter first, then talk to me about the ghosting
So
piece.
when it comes to the open to work banner, I
Yeah.
have gone back and forth on my thoughts on this. I do know that if you're in a senior level type of role, that I honestly don't typically recommend it because there is a bias of having somebody that is active versus passive. And so hiring
But
managers,
that's in the senior space. I just want to make that
that's in the
clear.
senior space, yes. So if
So is
you
that in the
are
director level or above, or
Yeah, I
define
would say
to me?
director level and above. Hiring managers do tend to have a bias of, active versus, we always want the things that we can't have, right? So that's kind of where that mentality comes in. However, this is where the asterisk comes in. If you're in a space where you are, and I don't want to use the word desperate, but you're at that point, you're at that tipping point, don't be ashamed to use it. It's a tool in your toolbox you can use. If you're a brand new college graduate or just a junior level person and you're in the market, use it because your network is probably not going to be as extensive. So I do firmly believe there's a case by case basis where it is appropriate. Can it be beneficial? Can it hurt you? I think that also people should use it and try it out for 30 days. See what kind of response you do get. Turn it off. You can also do it where you allow only recruiters to know that you're actively seeking.
Okay.
It doesn't have
Okay.
the banner on it, and that's also another tool that you can use where you're still letting recruiters know you're actively seeking, but not letting the entire world know. So I do think you can be in situations where you do need to use it, regardless of your level of experience. I do think director level and above should probably be more cautious with it. But again, and if you're junior, recent college grad, use it because you're building your network, you're building you want your outreach to be as far as possible. So
Got it.
I really come down to like, first off, we've given this stupid thing power. It doesn't, there's no shame of having it. So do not buy into that talk that people have. A lot of it is clickbait that they love to dive into, and be smart about it. Doesn't apply to where your job search is.
Got it. So I'm gonna tell you how much I appreciate you answering this question for me because I just think it's a catch-22 for job seekers, right?
Yeah,
On the one hand, we always tell people, let the world know that you're looking for a job, right? Open up, like don't be ashamed because some shame does come with being laid off or let go
absolutely.
or not being able to find a job. So you telling me that it depends on where you are. Senior levels should not do it, but there's an alternative. You got a switch that you can turn on that tells recruiters that you're looking. And that's who you really want to see, right? You want those
Yeah.
recruiters to see. So, yeah. So, thank you for that
And
information.
I do want
I
to
do
preface
appreciate
this. Recruiters do
it.
not have that bias, okay? If you're a
Yeah.
good,
Okay.
solid candidate, a recruiter is going to love you. It's the
Okay.
hiring managers that have this preconceived notion. A good recruiter has to sometimes push back on, well, why are they unemployed? Why are they looking? Why, like, oh, dude, it doesn't matter. Like they have X, Y, and Z. Like, why are we focused on this? Recruiters love a good candidate, okay? And honestly, a recruiter loves a more active candidate because a passive candidate, there's a lot of things that we don't control in this
Hmm.
process, and that person may decide to stay, not go. So a recruiter actually loves a good active candidate,
Got it.
more often than not. So yeah, so it's more of a hire. It's just that it's again, we all carry biases with us. It's just a bias that I have personally seen happen with hiring.
Got it. Okay. That's some great information. So every now and then I like to ask guests to sort of tell me about somebody in a job ecosphere that you want to give some advice to. And you mentioned the hiring manager. So if you were writing a letter, dear hiring manager, don't do this or do that. What are some things that you would tell a hiring manager that would help the entire process and help job seekers?
First thing I would tell a hiring manager is simply this. Let's look at your job description. What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give up? There's a lot in job descriptions that are simply just not needed, but we believe them to be needed. We've bought into this belief that the person has to have a 4-year degree or they have to have a certain number of years of experience. Why? The only person that I want ever with a lot of experience is a, God forbid I need it, but a good surgeon. That's the only person that I in the world that I really, if you're operating on me, yes, I want you to have a lot of experience. But, other than that, you really, what are you willing to give up? Because not everything's required and not everything's necessary. It just simply isn't. It will be open to being outside of your box in terms of certain qualifications and years of experience in particular. That is probably the biggest thing that I would tell hiring managers is what are you willing to give up in terms of this job search? Because
Okay.
job seekers are giving up a lot in terms of every single time they interview for a job. But what are you willing to give up? And quite honestly, there's probably a lot more there too about the interview process and the nature of it and other things. But that would be where I would start because it will open up their quality of candidate pool when we become more open-minded. Again, there's certain jobs, yes, that do require us to have a certain level of knowledge and experience. I don't doubt that. But even that does not necessarily mean, just because I have 6 years does not mean I'm any less, maybe I'm just as qualified as the person with 10 years. Maybe
Yeah.
I've gained, I've had the ability to get down and dirty in a shorter period of time. So, I think getting stuck on the qualification piece it's just something we have to kind of say, okay, what is not important in this job description?
Okay. So let me just kind of play this out. A resume comes through, right? Or a bunch of them. And would you say your job as a recruiter, you're the first filter,
Yes.
right? Okay. So, or maybe the ATS or whatever AI, but then you're the first filter. And then your experience is you say, hey, to the hiring manager, and they might say no because this doesn't completely fit the job description. Like, where does the friction occur?
So the friction usually occurs because they have preconceived notions. So
Mm.
one of my recruiting careers, I had a company that was in clinical research, and I would come across somebody amazing. They were in the cardiovascular space. Their CEO had a policy that everybody had to have a degree, a 4-year degree. It did not matter what job you were in or what you were doing. I would get so excited, be like, oh my gosh, I'd reach out to my HR person and be like, I even remember her name. Chanel, look at this, person. And she's like, they don't have a degree, Melanie. And I'm like this person is so qualified. Like, and she would admit it. So just the fact that like we couldn't even get to the point of like considering somebody because they just didn't have this one box, but yet had all this years of experience, never really like that kind of thing does not make sense. We should be
Yeah.
valuing experience. The other piece, the last company I worked with permanently, the CEO at that time had I was doing a search for the CFO and, was very adamant. First off, they weren't paying what the market value should have been. So they were already putting me as a recruiter in a challenging spot, which meant we weren't going to get the type of person that they were looking for.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I forget specifically, but he had some certain requirement. Like he was just very convinced that if somebody didn't have like if they were already at that salary or it was something along the salary lines that they would just leave in a few years. And I'm like, well, you're also not paying market value, so you're feeding into why they
That's
leave.
right. Because you have the choice to up the salary, right? And to
Right. I'm
make it
like,
equitable
you're
and keep them.
experiencing something because you're not recognizing why this is occurring. It's not occurring because of that person. It's occurring because of the parameters you have placed. And so, therefore, if you are not paying market salary, then you're not going to get the CFO that you expect on paper. And you're going to
Right.
have to get
Right.
the person. And, he would be like, well, that person's had 2 or 3 jobs, they're going to keep on leaving. And so there was always something. It was always these preconceived, what I call these little rabbit
Yeah.
holes of like, they've already determined in their head why, if they see a situation, why that person's not a good match. And so I do believe it's important. And one of the things I try to do as a coach is to educate my clients on what happens behind the scenes, because some of this is things you're never going to control. You're never going to
Yeah. That's right.
control that.
That's right.
And
That's right.
we can't, we have to focus on the things that we can control. So did I present myself to the best of my abilities? If you've done that, you're never going to control somebody's biases or preconceived notions about why they're expecting a certain person or, this person that they've imagined in their head. And so there's all these, I probably have 1,001 stories of, situations working with hiring managers of just crazy things that they would be looking for and wanting. And part of this is where a really good recruiter is not afraid to push back on those notions and saying, okay, I hear you, but here's why I really think this person is worth, I've had this conversation, I've had this, so I think it's important that recruiters also know to be very, it's not a bad thing to push back. It's not a bad thing to advocate for the right candidate when you
Yeah,
can.
yeah, I think that part is powerful. You being a coach and a recruiter advocating, right? Because a job seeker seems or may feel so alone, right? So no, I appreciate that. I feel like saying, hey, hiring managers, and talking to myself, open up, right? I do happen to be somebody who's more open. For example, I will glance over a resume. I'd look at it. I need to see that you have the experience, but what I'm looking for is, can you articulate that experience, right? Can you put me in a mindset that what you tell me based off my questions and your experience, does it give me a picture of what my future looks like? I also look at how you communicate, and I put you in positions like project managers have to communicate to steering committees, right? Which includes L1 and L2 leaders. How are they coming across? Are they giving me examples of how they are able to lead there? Also, giving me some indication that they know how to handle conflict pretty well. And so, if you can do those things, I'm not looking to see if you got a PMP. I'm not looking to see if you got any particular technical knowledge within the type of project, but as long as you can demonstrate that you can lead and that you really are a professional, and if I start to have a conversation using project management jargon and you can use it very well in context, then you've demonstrated to me that you can do it. And I'll usually know that within the first 15 minutes. And then the second thing I'll look for, and you probably coach this, but I'm just kind of throwing this out there to
Yep.
job seekers. If I ask you a question, no, if I ask you, do you have any questions of me? And I give you that form and you ask me zero questions, I don't care how good you were. I'm just going to pass you up, because in order to get the roots of problems, in order to be a good problem solver, in order to show me that you prepared or intellectual curiosity, you ask questions, right? So I know you probably coach all of that, but I do appreciate you giving us the skinny on hiring managers. I think that's powerful stuff. What I want to do now is I want to ask you a question. You got some good things coming up, right? The connection code. Well, let's talk a little bit about that and you and what you got coming up.
Yeah, so I'm really super excited. I have two big things coming up. One is I recently just did recordings of 4 courses with a company called Udacity. They're part of Accenture, where we did 2 courses for promotion seekers and job seekers for LinkedIn, and then a resume and a cover letter writing course. And these are going to be coming to the market very soon. And so it was a brand new opportunity for me to be on video, to be training in a totally different environment. So I had to learn a lot. It pushed me and pushed my comfort zone. So it was a good learning opportunity. But the big thing that I'm excited with, and my partner that I do with that I partner with on LinkedIn, we have a thing called the LinkedIn Rockstar Academy, and so we're rolling out a new kind of a. We're basically going to be offering a masterclass once every single month, offering basically you can come to our LinkedIn live sessions, which are free and open to the audience. And then we're going to have a paid masterclass, which then people can participate, but get direct one-on-one coaching with the opportunity to level up in a LinkedIn community that we're creating as well. So I'm super excited about that because it's going to allow us to really work with people and to walk through LinkedIn in a way that they feels comfortable for them, but also pushes their boundaries and their comfort zones to show up on LinkedIn and really understand how to achieve their goals. Everybody has goals that we should be achieving from a professional standpoint, wherever you're at. And what are those? And how can this tool that is, available with, millions of people. I think there's technically a billion plus people, they say, on the platform, but at least a million people,
Yeah.
millions of people you have access to, and are you using it in a way that can benefit you, whether it's your career or your business? So I'm very excited about those two things. And yeah, we're excited to be relaunching this and hopefully being able to help others understand, the challenges that they face on LinkedIn. But those are challenges I face too. And my partner, Shell, she faced them as well. And we just want to take it in a way to teach you authentically how to do it in a way that's best for you, not just how we tell you to do it.
That is awesome. And what we'll do is we'll link your courses right to this podcast so people can go directly to them. So I do want to thank you. This has been a very powerful conversation. And before we go, can you just tell us how can we connect with you?
So the best and easiest way, of course, is LinkedIn. You can always find me on LinkedIn, of course, first and foremost. Just mention that you heard me here, because I always love to know how people, come across me. You can also check out my website at findsucceedachieve.com. You can always reach out to me directly there as well. And those are usually the two best places to. I'm usually on LinkedIn pretty much all the time, every day. So you can always easily find me there. But my website is also easy way to have access to me.
Awesome. And if you're out there listening and you want to take your career to the next level, get in contact with Melanie. Melanie, thank you so much. I do appreciate you joining the show. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us for another episode of Vision to Reality podcast. Until next time, keep bringing your visions to reality. See you then. That's a wrap on today's episode of the Vision to Reality podcast. A huge thank you to today's guests. You can find all of their contact information in any resources mentioned in the show notes below. Also, can you do me a big favor? If you found today's conversation valuable, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a comment and a review, and share it with a friend or colleague who could benefit from the information shared today. And remember, vision without action is just a dream. Let's turn those big ideas into reality. I'll see you in the next episode.